Well, because there was a need for engineers, that if you were in college studying engineering, the draft board would defer you, not draft you if you could go and finish. But by 1944, I guess, they were saying, no, we decided we'd rather have you in the service. And so if you...
Maybe being up with your hands. Sorry.
So in 1944, they needed people badly enough that they were drafted us. And then we learned, though, quite a while before that about something that had intrigued me since I was a senior in high school is this secret thing called radar.
Yeah.
And we could just barely get the idea of what it was, but it was so secret. We heard that for instance, in the Navy, if you take this special course to become a radar technician, when you got into the classroom, they'd lock the doors and then open the vaults and take out the books. And by the end of the day, then you'd have to wait until they put the books all back in there before they unlock the doors and let you go back.
Really?
Yeah.
You became a radar engineer.
Is that noise too much now?
I'm making noise, yeah.
I just asked the question again. The plane is semi, but... So your first questions we can re-record, but not yours. So that's why when she's talking, it doesn't matter so much.
With that?
Well, just if my questions that are a bit noisy, I can just do it again later.
Oh.
But we can't record you later.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a disadvantage for you.
We did change our travel plans for staying another month.
Yeah.
What do you say? Oh, another month. Weird. Turned out they did have a training course like that, and if you took an exam and passed it, then you could get into that program. So that's what I'd done. So right from the start, when I was drafted, I was sent then to the Navy to begin their basic training, and then go into this training they called to be electronic technician, which you're responsible for repairing all kinds of things, from the teletype equipment to the radio equipment to the radar and the underwater equivalent of radar, which was sonar and all of that. So it was about a year of training. It was just very, very valuable.
Yeah.
And since I had 2 years of pre-engineering, it was just terrific to add that. And so I went to that year of training, and the interesting thing is, then we were given a couple of weeks of leave, and we put back to San Francisco, and that's where we'd had our last 7 months of training on Treasure Island in San Francisco, which was all Navy then. And so we got on this ship, and this was a really interesting thing. It was a converted freighter converted to be passengers, which means the provisions were very crude and all these sailors and Marines and not very many Army guys, I guess. And the ship backed out from its docking at San Francisco and went under the San Francisco Bay Bridge and around towards going out of the Golden Gate Bridge. But we noticed firecrackers and things going off, and we thought, we didn't realize that they'd say goodbye to every ship. We all went over the rail to look at something like that, and just then the captain came out on the bridge, looked down at us all like this, and said, "Japan just surrendered." And we all went, oh, because nobody would admit to anybody else that they were headed over to the invasion, and but then this was the strangest thing. All maybe 150 guys on that particular deck or something, I don't know, all turned and looked up to the captain like that, and then almost all at once say, "Well, for Christ's sake, turn around."
Did he?
No, he just went like this. But that was the last of this informal exchange that we ever had. The formal things, you never talk to an officer like that. But
How did you like your time in the Navy?
well, it was a basic round-off education that I never ever would have gotten if I'd stayed there in Oregon State College, because the world was not very big. I read a lot about all the things that's in the world, but just, to go and like, we went through Chicago to the training grounds where they call the Great Lakes training grounds up there for basics, and then we had then a month in a special little primary school. They would send you to these primaries right in Chicago, and then 3 months in college town called Stillwater, Oklahoma, and then 7 months on a Treasure Island in San Francisco there. So that was the only time I'd been very far at all. My mother grew up in a little town east of Seattle, Washington, called Redmond, Washington, which is now famous for being the headquarters of Microsoft. But it was just a very small town. The year my father died, it's September, and so my mother decided she just couldn't stand to be there all by herself, so she went up and we spent the winter, the 3 kids and she and I, in the big house and the properties that my grandfather had homesteaded years before that, and then went to school, and a small grade school there, 5th grade. And that was all just another kind of extension of experience. That's where I decided I was never going to drink coffee.
Why?
See, all of the relatives were Scandinavian that came around, and I just remember how remarkable it was when they all come out in the morning. Oh, I have to have coffee, when they're visiting or not. And I thought, oh, wouldn't that be terrible to have to be dependent upon something like that? And so.
Are you sure it wasn't alcohol?
Oh yeah, well. Anyway. So the Navy, and especially the year when we shipped from San Francisco, it took 38 days chugging across the Pacific Ocean at 10 miles an hour. It was quite a break to get to the Philippine Islands where we'd been sent, and so after about a month of being shuffled around, I ended up at the naval base right in Manila. And but that year of being, on one hand, responsible like I was, within a few months, other people had left to go home, and I was in charge of all the electronics to keep that place in communication. And
How was that?
well, I didn't sweat about it, but it was an interesting, responsible job.
Yeah.
One time, there was a ship that was in trouble sinking or something, someplace in one of the ocean areas around the Philippines that were in this area of responsibility of the admiral there. And so some of the communications were having trouble, and boy, there was half of the officers seemed to be coming around in my shop, sort of standing there like that. They weren't hassling us at all, but you could just tell that their own reputation for how to run a proper communication center was dependent upon how I could patch up the communications. What? The country boy just said, well, okay, well, we should try this, we should try.
How was it to be suddenly surrounded? Like, you know, do you know what I mean? Because you grew up without a father, and suddenly you were in a navy. It must have been very. Did you have trouble with the discipline and
no.
kind of the male thing?
No, not a bit.
You quite enjoyed it.
Well, who said that? I said, no. Well, I just took it all. It was just. I didn't have, that's just the way the culture was. Oh, that's interesting.
But it must have been a major difference.
Oh, absolutely. But there wasn't any thought at all about rebelling to it. It was just
no, of course not.
How I adapt to it, and you heard enough stories about it. Well, even the equivalent of the sergeant major or something was they called a chief petty officer then, who was in charge of us through our training and things like that. So he wasn't even a commissioned officer, but he's about the highest you get as a non-commissioned. Mm-hmm. Whatever rules he could do. It's like, during the night, the barracks full of us all, we get to know each other, so pretty soon they'd be giggling and talking, and there's supposed to be lights out and quiet, see. And all of a sudden, the lights would come on, and this guy would be standing there, and he knew he just had to put on an act, or something like that. All right, attention! And all everybody scrambles out, standing there, and he leaves you all standing like that, like he walks up and glares at you, and somehow, I don't think any of us feared any kind of horrible punishment, because it was just kind of act like that. But we played our role.
Yeah.
And then he says, all right, he says, when the lights go out, I don't want to hear a sound from you guys. Get it? Yes, sir. Then he turned out the light and go away. And there'd still be people giggling.